Tebogo? Okay. I'm not so sure if Tebogo is here. All right. Okay. I think I'll just do the session. Welcome everybody. Shama, welcome. Noka, Ntobi, Homulemo, George. Tebogo, are you ready? You need to unmute. But that is how these things work. You need to, there you go.
I know, it's like a year later, we're still asking to unmute. Sorry. Okay, so I see you in the storm and in the car, and
Yeah.
maybe let me just take it on from here.
Yes,
And
please.
we've got about 10 people in the room, and I hope you can all hear me. So I'm just going to check in. Can everybody hear me?
I can.
Yes.
You can do a chat or an emoticon, anything but indifference is great.
I can hear you.
Anything but silence. I see Dr. Roche is frozen.
I can hear you.
I don't know if we might need to mute to stop the video.
I can hear you, Tebogo. I don't know if you can hear us. Okay. Yeah, it's what happens with ESCOM and water cards and okay. Okay, she's out. Okay, I think I'll start and then she'll join along the way. So thank you so much, colleagues, for coming through. Quite an amazing book. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Thoroughly enjoyed it. I, when I started reading it, I think for me what stood out is the stories that that are in the book, and I think also the fact that it comes across as a very well researched book. So for me, it was something that I read it twice. I read it the first time, and I had to go back to it because there's quite a lot of stories in here. There's quite a lot of content in here, and I'm one guy who I grew up. Okay, maybe not a good idea. I went through my high school with my favorite quote being Aristotle's quote about we are what we repeatedly do, therefore excellence is not an event but a habit. And this book just sort of confirmed that. But what James Clear has done, I mean, he has divided the book into 4 laws on how to change habits, how to create habits, how to stop habits. And what he's basically saying is that excellence in everything that we do is about habits. And I love the quote that he says that it's not about motivation. You don't fall to the level of your motivation, but you fall to the level of your systems. And I found that to be quite very, very interesting. So I don't want to go too deep into it. I want to also give you a chance to also share your views of the book. But the 4 laws about changing a habit basically is make what the habit that you want to achieve or to develop, make it obvious. And law number 2, make it attractive. Number 3, make it easy. And number 4, make it satisfying. And the book is divided into those 4 aspects. Make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, and make it satisfying. And in each of those laws, she breaks down, he goes deeper, he shares stories about the laws, and plenty of examples of what he's referring to. So I, I went through the book, I was highlighting, it's one of those tweetable books, like almost every paragraph is like, what, this is a tweet, what, this is, quite a lot of stories. What stood out, I mean, I can take you through all this, but what stood out for me, one of the things that he spoke about is change the environment. If you want to adopt a particular habit, make sure that you put yourself in an environment that makes it easier for you to develop that habit. And the penny dropped, and I've always known this, but I think how he put it made so much sense. And he gives an example of drug addicts, to say, if you want to stop using drugs, or if you want to quit drugs, you don't put drugs in an environment that enables you to do drugs. So that's why when people want to quit drugs, they go to rehab, they change the environment, and they go to an environment that makes it easier for them to develop the habit of quitting drugs. And he says, and I thought that was quite interesting to say, then it doesn't make sense to then, when a person has stopped using drugs, to put them back in the same environment that enables them to use drugs. And for me, I found that to be quite interesting, to say, develop the environment that you want, that makes it easier for you to develop the right habits. So yeah, that's my first jab at the book. I don't know if anyone wants to add on that, and then we can go around sharing our thoughts. But I thought, for me, it's quite an important book. This is not just a good book, it's an important book. I was actually having a mentorship session with some couple of entrepreneurs today. And one of the things that I was saying to them is, you want to be successful, develop successful habits. It's as simple as that. It's not I mean, to a large extent, yes, you need to be intelligent, but to a greater extent, you need to have habits that makes it easier for you to succeed. And habits such as reading, habits such as finding yourself in the right group of people, habits such as being organized, and all those things. And this book is quite amazing when it comes to developing winning habits. So success is not really about being smart or being the smartest in the room, but success is about developing the right habits. And I mean, as I was reading the book, I was like, yes. So yeah, quite an amazing book, quite a remarkable book. I'll give it a rate later on out of 10. I'll tell you how much I give it out of 10. And I'll also tell you what I think my reservations about the book is, like what are the things that I think could have been improved on, or could have been done slightly different. But this here is not just a business book, it's a life skill book from where I'm sitting. So thank you so much. I don't know if Tebogo is back, but yeah, who wants to give it a stab? Who has read the book? Let's start there. Who has read the book? Shama, have you read the book? Shama. Okay.
Hi, Dr. Rosh. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
I have read the book. I'm doing so much better these days. I'm just 2 chapters out. I'm at chapter, I think, 17. I think that's 20 chapters.
Yes.
I'm just about to start chapter 18, but I've read almost all of the book, 8 out of 10 of the book.
Ah, great. We'll
Yes.
come back to you. Anyone else? Lolo, have you read the book?
Yes, sir, I have. It was very interesting. I mean, I read this book. I think we've had a chat about this. I read this book prior to starting our mentorship program. And it was so good that it was recommended on the program. But at the time, it really resonated with me because I needed that cleanup in terms of just a more systemic approach to things, you know, and with our program, it's always about teaching what you could have done better. Reading it again was I did go with your flow, with the you know.
Okay, I'm not so sure if I'm the only one who's not hearing you. Okay, Lolo. Okay. Anyone else? I'm not so sure if Lolo or it's me. Me Makasa, have you read the book?
Rosh, am I audible or not?
Yes, now you're audible. You vanished a bit. Yes, now you're audible. Go on.
So I was saying, I read the book. It was great. It was worthy of recommendation to our mentees for our maiden cohort in 2020. But reading it for the second time was quite different. I was seeing differently, and what you say about the stories, I didn't see the first time. I didn't connect with the stories until the second time, and the lessons were just profound. I mean, the story where he mentions, I can't remember where exactly in the book, but where he talks about the accident he had with a baseball bat. And everything was so resonant. So it was really, really more different to the first time where I read it. And the lessons are life lessons. And for me, it's more like when I talk about the story around the bat and being on the pitch and really being hurt like that, it just opened up all sorts of other things. So for me, the book opened other doors, but it's so I didn't, like I'm saying, the first time I didn't connect with the stories more. It was just the lessons, because I was on this rampage of self-development and, you know, empowering myself, but I missed out on the little things that really, really matter. So for me, I really, really enjoyed that. I enjoyed the way he wrote, like you're saying. It feels attacking. It feels like there's violence, because it's stuff you do, some very subconsciously, but it brings things to surface that you do yourself. So I really enjoyed it. And I enjoyed reading it the second time and reading it much, much slower.
Okay. Tabuko?
Hi, I just got back on, and I'm actually realizing we're not going to rise to our potential in this country. We're going to fall to our country's systems. It's such a painful thing, because I've got a good network, but it's not connecting, so I've been in and out. And I was really excited about it. I really enjoyed this book, and I was excited about it.
So go for it. I was holding the fort for you, so now you are back. Please take over.
I might just get cut out again, because there's a bit of a storm. So there's a full network, but the storm keeps putting me in and out.
Okay. Now we have got people with Kadas who can take over if you break down.
I figured that's why I also invited Mtobi. I'm like, Mtobi, it's your first time here, but I know you've got.
Yes, Mtobi must also come on board. I'm looking forward to hearing you.
Mtobi, come on board if anything happens.
The hospital passes here.
It's not a hospital pass, so you can do this. So with this book, I think, do you want me to get into my review, or where would you like me to?
Yes, no, you start, you do the whole thing. I've sort of done my little bit of review, but you start according to your plan and we'll follow you.
Okay.
I'm bouncing.
All right. So everyone, if I get cut out, we can basically just take it from here, because if Dr. Roche has done the summary of the book, I think the next will be then just taking a pulse all around the room on who's read the book so far, and who hasn't. So maybe for those that cannot speak, you can sort of even put it in the chat if you've read the book. I don't know if you guys have already covered that bit while I was out.
We were still busy on that. I have read it. Lolo has read it. Shama has read it. Okay, I'll give it to her. She has read it.
Okay.
Yeah, that's where we were. So you can cover the others, but the three of us have read the book.
Okay, I've also read the book. I actually kept on I was audio reading, and I actually read the PDF, because I kept on going back and back and back to some of the things, hoping that I'll internalize it. I know, Toby, it's your first time here, so you probably I don't know if you probably had read the book in the past or not. George has read it. Miss Trainee has read it. So, George, can I start with you? Maybe you can give us you can give us a bit of your take on the book.
Oh, okay. Can you hear me? Am I audible?
It's actually, yeah, it's perfect.
All right. I'm not gonna do the camera. I didn't put any makeup. I'm not looking nice and like you. Okay.
No,
It's my first time here. Thank you.
oh well, you're
It's my first
welcome.
time. Yes, it's my first time. I got invited by a friend of mine, Trady. Thank you so much for the invite, and thank you for Dr. Roche for allowing me to be a part of this review. And hopefully, I'll be a part of many more to come. And yeah, I'm a bad reader. Just to disclose, there, I try. I've got the will, to read. I think I've written a list of like about 100 books that I want to read. It's just a monkey on my back that I want to get off. But I've came across the book Atomic Habits, and I've read a couple of chapters. And like always, I always just um, somewhere somehow I just lose the plot. But I'm hoping to get better around it. But I also listen to a lot of his interviews and try to understand what was his thinking, when he was writing the book. So I try to read as many articles and also have an understanding of what 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 is he referring to, what do you mean when he talks about atomic habits, because it, it came round about the right point. I think there's this saying, I don't know who says it, but when the student is ready, the master appears. It's like, when you want things to happen somewhere somehow, it's like you can harness it. I want this, the secret or something like that. I don't really understand those powerful and universe and all those things, but for me recently I see when I want something, like I would say, maybe I want something, then that something just happens somewhere somehow, even if it doesn't happen in a week or 2 weeks or something like that. But yeah, I was in a stage in my life where I needed to really reset and restart, and let me say a transformation phase in my life where I was trying to do a bit of you know deep searching and trying to understand who am I actually, and I came across this book, and I understood, these motivational speakers, they'll speak about, you need to be focused, you need to be disciplined, you need to be this, you need to be that. But I really struggled for 12 months to figure out how. Like, you tell me I need to be successful, I need to do this, but how? I can't. I don't know how to do that, even though I might read about it and I might hear about it, but it's very difficult to implement, especially bad habits. It took me 20 years to form bad habits. I can't expect to change them in 6 months or in 6 days, because I read a book, so it's like theory through practice, but atomic habits, it definitely helps. There's this saying, it says, I don't know also who says it, but the mind does not retain what you want it to retain, but it retains what you constantly expose it to. So once I got that, once I heard that nugget there, then it was like, oh, okay, this is a mental diet. As much as I need to keep my body nice and looking good and eating healthy, I need to eat healthy. So it's the same for the mind. I can't retain what I want to retain. I can't be successful just by I want to be successful, but I need to constantly, as Dr. Rush was saying, expose myself to environments that will allow my 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 development to then take place. Much like your mind is like a garden. You need to prune it and you need to nurture it and make sure that you water it, etc., etc. So yeah, not to go on and on and on, but yeah, so I fundamentally got what it means, to look at atomic, what at the smallest particle, what atom means, look at the small things, like it can be as easy as implementing a 5-minute ritual into your daily routine. Then when you know it, then you definitely do see that improvement. So yeah, a mental diet has definitely helped me, in terms of what I expose myself to. I definitely look at what I read, what I watch, and types of places I go, the types of people I associate myself with. So yeah, that mental diet, I'm very conscious, in terms of my spirituality also. Give that balance between gym, between spirituality, between eating healthy, just strike a balance, and I think that can also be done, each day. Each day is a if you are unable to approach life 1 year at a time, approach it a month at a time. If you can't approach it a month at a time, approach it a week at a time. If you can't approach it a week at a time, a day at a time. If not, an hour at a time. Take it as small as you want, and then build from there. So
Okay.
it definitely, yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah. So yeah, that's
No,
it for me.
so
Thank you.
it's a tiny habits that you got from here. I think somebody's got two listening devices, so I'm getting an echo myself. I mean, you're correct in that he says that, don't look at the goal, look at the small process of a daily process that you basically improve 1% at a time on a daily basis, rather than sort of look at a big goal, so tiny habits that lead to that. I'm gonna ask Mpo says, I'm not sure if Mpo is a guy or girl, but they have not read the book, but with glad that you're here, you'll basically get the insights from other people and you feel like you've read it. So Shama, you've read the book, and I think actually I found it quite interesting with your review from the last book, Great by Design, and this. And I constantly, as I was reading, I was like, I'm not sure which book I'm reading because they were so nicely connected, like they felt like the same thing.
Yeah.
Toby's got his hand raised, so I'm just before we continue, Shab, I'm just gonna ask Toby, do you want to contribute something quickly?
Yeah, thank you for making me part of the session. I also haven't read the book. Just listening to George and Dr. Roche earlier and some of the other reviews, a point that resonates with me is mindfulness. So does that come into it where you're sort of learning how to reprogram yourself and have better behaviors? So there's the mindfulness element that I'd like to hear you guys speak about, but then also I'd like to hear about process over outcome, because if you're changing your behaviors, then the small victories might be something that you think is insignificant to mention, but you're forming new habits. So is there any guidance or assistance around that process of unlearning and then learning new behaviors? Thank you.
He does make recommendations about, as you say, the outcome, but he actually says you should not be outcome based, because if you're focusing on the win, then the win has a duality that either you win or you fail, and when you fail, then it's almost like the end and it's a downward spiral. And if you're more process focused than outcome based, you end up, it's almost like the idea of enjoying the journey, rather than the destination. That if you, and I think it's in the fourth law is that you must make it satisfying whatever you do, instead of just, oh, I want to get here. Like, so it's not like today I've won this, so I want to get to that. Today I won this. It's more like, are you sticking to the process on a daily basis, but also to avoid boredom, rather than to sort of, he doesn't have, like, that's kind of for me. I'll get when you get to the end, that I felt was missing, that those tiny wins a day, because he doesn't like the duality of a win or fail. Because then if you fail one day, you sort of can get demotivated, and rather than going on to the next thing. So the win is more sticking to the habit. But let's I think sorry, we will get to it, and I think everybody that has read the book will cover that in a bit. So Shama, over to you.
Okay, good evening, everyone.
Hi.
So I read the book and I'm just 2 chapters out. I think I'm gonna read chapter 19 and 20 and I'll be done. And I thoroughly enjoyed it, considering we're coming from a heavy read, great by choice. So this one felt like a walk in the park. It felt like a reward from the hectic book that we'd read. So it was nice to read, and I felt like even the way he just wrote it, it felt like soft, like he cares about you, although some points were like really confrontational, you know. I think for me, essentially, the book is about behavioral change, and I'm at a point in my life where I'm just desperate for change. Any type of positive change I will take, you know. So I highlighted so many things, and I like how it's just such a simple book, simple principles to implement. I especially enjoyed the 2-minute rule. Like, that is so simple. Who can do anything for 2 minutes? You know, you start with 2 minutes and next thing you are like right in the thick of things. And also how like he spoke about like your goals, breaking them down into very easy, moderate, hard, and very hard, you know. And yeah, like I made a bit of notes. So basically, like Dr. Roche had said earlier, preparing your environment so that it's conducive. And then I remember the part where he spoke about that lady with Jim who would take an Uber to the gym, and then saying that like habits are an entry point, not the end point. You know, like the cab, the lady would call the cab. That's the entry point, not the gym, right? And then another thing that I really enjoyed was,
Shama,
yes.
before you go on, I'd like you to actually, just for the benefit of the guys that did not read the book, for the 2-minute rule, you actually mentioned in 2 things that I think the examples were even about the gym, because the 2 minutes was about that, and the lady does take an Uber. Do you remember the examples in detail a little bit, so you can share the anecdote with the guys that did not read?
Oh, for instance, with the 2-minute rule, like if you want to like develop a habit and just starting, say for instance, if you want to read a book, you can start with just 1 page for 2 minutes. If you want to do yoga, just start taking out the yoga mat. If you want to study, you start with opening the book. If you want to fold your laundry, you start with just the pair of socks. Like very, very simple things. If you want to start running, you take out your running shoes, and then you start with the simplest thing for 2 minutes, and then it helps you to get started. Like a 2-minute rule is like a gateway to creating a habit naturally. Does it make sense?
Yeah, I think, yeah, because there was a guy actually in the book, for those that have not read, who went to the gym and literally stayed for 2 minutes. Like he'll walk on the treadmill for 2 minutes. So and it was the thing of, if you take it at a certain time all the time. So if at 6 o'clock you're gonna meditate, and do not exceed the 2 minutes. And that actually reminded me of the 48 rules of power, where the guy says, do not exceed your point of a point that you set for success. So that was like that, to say, do 2 minutes and get out. Don't try to force yourself to do 30 minutes, but at a certain period or at a certain time where you're setting to set up the rule, do that 2 minutes. So I think this is just for those that have not read it. And then the Uber one was also quite interesting. Can you share the details of that example? You're muted, Shama.
Sorry. Yeah, so he was just basically giving an example of going to gym. So what the lady would do is she would call a cab in the morning, and then once the cab or Uber is there, she's already in the cab, so she might as well go to gym because she's already out of the house. So basically just using something as an entry point into the actual habit. So it's like very simple things that are simple, but if you look back, you're like, this is really simple, but why am I not even doing it? But if you break it out, like when they say atomic, like tiny, tiny, tiny little thing that builds up to the big thing. Yeah. And then, yeah, the gateway to running would be to put on your running shoes. If you're wearing your running shoes, you might as well run. The shoes are already on.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Thanks, Shama. I think, do you have, Noka, have you read the book? Would you like to share your insights? Okay. Lolo, would you like to share your take on the book?
Hi, I spoke earlier, but I can talk again. I think you'd hopped off.
Yes. Well,
Yeah.
it's packed with a lot of examples. So if you've got
Yeah.
more insights.
Yeah. No. Absolutely. So this was the second time that I was reading the book, and I was saying earlier on that the first time I read the book, it was because it was in alignment with the self-improvement, self-help books. I'm on this, and we made that a recommendation for our mentees on our program. But when I read it the second time, it was even more for me. The first time it was about, it resonates with me. There are certain things that it helped me with. I want somebody else to benefit. But this time around, it was much more, I'm going to say, cathartic. And I was noticing the little stories and the anecdotes that he uses much more than I did before. And earlier on, I gave an example, and I'm going to explain why this particular example. And this is where he was, I can't remember where exactly in the book, but he was talking about the time when he was young, and he'd always thought he's going to be a footballer, not footballer, but be a sports person. And the baseball hit him right between his eyes. And for me, it's the story that spins off from there to say, sometimes, we are looking for the grand advice, the grand nuggets, but the actual stories will resonate so differently to you as you progress in life. So for me, it's a side note, but I thought that was very, very interesting. I made a few notes. For me, what was just so simple yet so profound. Get 1% better. Just focus on the very incremental progress. And he focuses a lot on the compound effect of everything that it is that you do, as opposed to setting a goal and achieving it. Like you were saying earlier on, he's not about achieve the goal as the end result, but everything else that builds up to that. I mentioned earlier also that it's a very, you feel attacked because a lot resonates. A lot of what he's talking about is stuff that we are subconsciously doing, but we're not realizing the negative aspect of it. So for me, reading it the second time was it was more sobering than before. So for me, that I enjoyed. And I like how he speaks about atomic habits, but it applies in every aspect. I mean, he'll touch on the health aspect, right? With your consistency, but also your just the healthy approach to what you do. But that same advice will apply in your corporate spaces, right? In your thoughts, in your spiritual journey. It's not just about food. So for me, I like that. I enjoyed the way he split the book. It was very sequential. When you leave it, you know what you're coming back to. There aren't always surprises all over the place. And he practices what he preaches. I mean, he's so consistent, even with his his newsletter is it's so predictable, but in a good way. You know it's going to come through. You know the format is going to come in, and it's so digestible the way that he shares the information. I would have liked to see him possibly expand a bit more, and maybe actually create more examples around I noted it down, around the plateau of latent potential. I wish he'd spent a bit more time there. It's intriguing, but I wish he dismantled it in the same way that he was able to do everything else, and do it in a very simple manner. I like how Shama says it's like he cares for us. He had you in mind, Shama. I really like that. And when I say it was easy to follow because it's broken down into those areas. I just wish he just spent a bit more time with breaking that much further. Maybe I think visually. So if I can't visualize what someone is saying, it becomes a bit. Yeah, I struggle to connect, and I like connecting when I'm reading. I like really, really visualizing what someone is talking about. So I enjoyed the book. I thoroughly enjoyed the book, and I enjoyed the anecdotes so much. Such a, it's a type of book you actually ended up giving away the previous copy as a gift to my baby cousin. I don't know if she's managed to join in. I've invited her because she's at that stage in her life where she's ready for growth, for impact, for new systems, and she's starting a new business. And that couldn't have been a better gift. I went and got myself another one. That's how good it is. Yeah.
I think I don't know. Toby put a question, and I think you touched on it a little bit. And it says, how much of an emphasis is placed on defining success versus the habits that you will get to success? So I don't know if when you say success, that is equivalent to goals, or to a point where you're like at the peak of your Mount Kilimanjaro. But I think in my view, he basically emphasizes on success. And I think what Lola also mentioned when he says, if you get like 1%, if you just improve 1% a day in your process, and I think that's like you measuring. And I think there was a point where I thought, this is too much admin. If I had to review that 1%, what does 1% increase in my end goal mean? Like if I'm increasing 1% over 365 days, and it actually shows that if you've got a good habit that you do the 1% daily, by the end of the year, you're going to end up with a 37.78 improvement. But if you get increasingly worse, because he talks about both sides of habits, that you already have habits, but they could be bad or good. But if you've got a bad habit and every day you're getting 1% worse, or you're feeding that habit, you actually end up at zero performance level. So I don't know if that he does measure success, but I think he emphasizes on the habit that will get you to success, and measuring those tiny habits and getting there. And I think another thing that you mentioned, Lolo, that I even encouraged Toby to come here, when he talks about corporate, and there's a chapter that talks about working as a team, and especially in basketball, working as a collective and leveraging of everybody's strengths, and increasingly measuring that and getting the statistics. So there's a lot of measurements that I felt he gets into, that you also measure the habit. So it's not just a random habit. It's a point where I think, Lolo, you say that you wish it'd gone a little bit more on, I think, on what you're doing.
Yeah.
The plateau, because he sort of said you basically, and he uses the ice example. He's got a lot of structures of interpretation for everybody. So if you want to look at, if you can interpret the ice, and he mentioned that you basically will, if you increase the heat, if you put a block of ice on heat and you keep increasing, you don't see, there's a point where nothing happens, and when it gets to 32 degrees, then the ice starts melting. And I think you see that with a lot of us, that you keep doing these tiny habits, and you see nothing, and out of nowhere, boom, something different happens. And I think I'm going to gym now, and my gym has been my atomic habit to sort of say I'm gonna go twice a week, even if I don't want to. And suddenly out of nowhere, I could see the difference. Like I didn't even see it until other people saw it. And even my instructor was saying to me that you might not see it, and suddenly in December, boom, you've got a summer body. And I was like, nah, that will never happen. And for 2 months I didn't see it happen. And I think he talks about that, but he doesn't go enough into the plateau, and I think that's the part that we all get discouraged about, these tiny habits. And you're right, it would have been nice to go into that when what happens when you stagnate, and how do you get better at that.
And just to add to what you're saying, and taking it back to corporate, and the question now about success, it's similar to how we'll be told, I am not an overnight success, right? I am seemingly an overnight success, but in reality, it's the micro moments that led to this boom, this seeming explosive boom that makes it look like I'm an overnight success. But it's the little things that it's the multiple 1% that compounded and got me where I am.
Yeah, it's like when you get to that 32% when the ice melts. And I think usually people use it with a jar, that a woman will come in and try and open the jar and give it to a guy, and the guy opens it, and the woman will always say, but I loosened it up before you just open it. And I actually thought that would have been a common example where you try something and the next person just comes and does it so easily. And it's quite interesting also linking it to, and I think Shama said that when we read the last book, which was heavy, but it talked about the 20-mile and doing something every single day for 20 minutes, no matter no matter what the weather is, you just do that thing every single, and you don't go beyond the point of success. And it linked with this one to say, do that 1%, because you don't see that incremental thing. But the difference with the last book is that the team that did the 20 minutes daily actually came back alive. And the team that worked like randomly, on good days they worked for an hour, on bad days they didn't work at all, they all died. And and that was a real life story, and a sad one, but it kind of shows that consistency and that little bit, you don't have to do the big stuff to actually succeed. So thanks, Lolo, for your review. That's quite nice. Then I'm gonna ask Malisela, you've read the book. What is your response? What is your take on it?
Yeah. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
So yes, it was actually, when you say it was a heavy book, the previous book was a heavy book. So I didn't necessarily read the previous book. I started it, but I hadn't finished it. But this for me was quite heavy, in a sense where I listened to it, but now the problem with me listening to it was that you're almost trying to catch up to what he's actually trying to say, and not spending time in what he's actually fathoming what he's actually saying. But I must say, I got a lot of what you're saying, and just like you were all saying, it is quite a personal book, because it's impossible as a human being to be in a place where you know what you need to do, but that feeling of, oh, I have to do it, and you have to be consistent. It tells you what you already know, but I like what Shama's saying, but it tells you in a way where it's very personal, where it's very and I think maybe the word again is that atomic, where it's very granular to what you need to do to get to where you would like to get to. But I think what I want to focus on, in a sense, now is more on the it's a very sobering book, in a sense of when I'll go to the athlete part, when he was talking about the sports guys, where he had Michael Phelps, and he also had the runner from Morocco, and how he said those people were in the right sports with the right futures to get to where they needed to get to. But not only that, but they too had to work at a a constant pace to get to the level that they eventually got to, you know. And so I was also I was an athlete as well for a long time, until university, until after university, and then that's when I stopped. And I would say that, like, I've trained with Olympiads, I've trained with a world record holder as well, in the same team as me. And what I see that is different from all the other people is that on top of this guy had the features to Vela be an Olympiad and to be a world record holder. That is, I mean, whatever a world record holder looks like. But the one thing that really stood out for me every single time I would see him train, or I would see him just being him, is how he knew himself and how he worked on the small things. Even though everybody else wasn't doing something, he would constantly be there. Maybe 30 minutes, he will be there 30 minutes before he needs to train, doing the same things that he needed to do, warming up outside. And then eventually inside the training, he would warm up again. So he would do all those things constantly every single time. And it got to a stage where you'll be doing a set, for instance, and he'll be like, you know what, I can feel my body's not well. I'm going to stop now today, but I'll come back tomorrow. And now that would be something everybody would be like, okay, but I don't actually understand how my body actually is. But the only reason we don't really understand where our body is because we don't constantly work on the atomic side of our body, knowing our body enough to say, you know what, I felt like this before, and when I continued like this, it actually broke me down. But rather, if I did it in a constant way, where today I know I'm not well, I'll come back tomorrow, and tomorrow Vele, he comes back and he's just as good as you'd left him when he was good. And that's, I think, the difference in what I think the author was trying to say as well, is that getting to a point where you know yourself, or you know where you are, but it doesn't just happen. You need to constantly do the work to get to those moments where eventually you know your surroundings, you know the feeling of what you're feeling in that time. You know, Vela, if okay, right now, if I've always known that if I start work at 9 o'clock in the evening, I sleep at 12, I usually don't wake up for gym in the next morning, because you know those are the kind of things that you've gone constantly with, and you keep on failing, and you know that is not that part of your life maybe is not a very it's not where you are most successful in. So yeah, I really like what he was saying, what he constantly gave feedback on how the different people performed. Like I said, from an athletic point of view, I could really resonate with it. An example, for instance, with me and with the training we used to do is that because I was a swimmer, and with swimming, it's a very individual sport, in a sense of you train as a team, but you're very individual in knowing what you need to do. And now one of the things that used to happen is, you know, if you miss a training session, someone else is training harder than you, and you need to get back to that, because then when they beat you, you shouldn't be surprised. So it guilt trips you into going to training every single day, or every single time you need to train, doing the gym work, doing the pool work, doing the stretching. All of those things add to you being the best performer at what you need to do, you know? I mean, one of the things, for instance, they used to say to us, our coach used to say to us, is that you mustn't crouch every single time you walk on, or you sitting down, because that actually has an impact on your back, and you need a lot of your core strength, your back, your core muscles to train. Now, things like that, where you almost have to catch yourself putting your shoulders back, because it actually has an effect on your whole body, or in fact on your performance at the end of the day. Now, it's things like that we constantly had to work on and remind ourselves that if we're not doing it, someone else is doing it, and that someone else is probably going to beat you in the pool, even if you have talent or not. And that's one thing it kind of resonated with me, and it kind of gave me that aha moment to say how I should see my life is, wherever I want to get to, just that small habit eventually every single day will get you to where you need or where you want to get to, even though you don't see it. I think one of the problems that maybe a lot of people, especially now, our younger generation, us younger generation, is that we don't have patience to see the granular work coming to work. I mean, working on the granular work and everything else. We see the, I guess, as they say, the Instagram life, where someone only shows the success and doesn't show the small habits that they needed to do to get to where they are. As people always say, it took me 20 years to be an overnight success. All of those things that you did in that 20 years led to eventually where you needed to be. So it's you almost do what you need to do now, so that, and be where you need to be, so that all those things can match up and get you to where you need to go to. And that's, for me, is very important, is having the patience to say, it doesn't matter, I'm working on it. It doesn't matter, I'm working on it. Where even if you don't, and we all said it now, even if you don't feel like it, it's not about the feeling in that moment, but that 1% that you add into the jar. As he gave an example of, if you want to be able to have a good cue, is have a jar and put something in it every single day. And as small as it feels in that moment, every single day you put in, you see it grow slowly but surely. It gives you that motivation to actually continue and do the work, because you're seeing the jar getting fuller and fuller and fuller. So it's something that it kind of gave me that, let me kind of like do this again, where do the work, obviously have it in moderation, because you don't want to be the person that runs forward and you all in it, but you actually burn yourself out. But you want to have something that actually entices you and gets you to be, it's almost like game theory in a way, where you gamify something so much that it gives you that cue to always come back and always fish you back into what you need to do each day. So yeah. Sorry, Joe.
No, go on.
No. So I was just saying that for me, it's a book that I really need to read again. It's once is not enough, but it's one of those books that you have to keep on your side table, where it'll be a reminder each year that, okay, am I still doing what I said I want to do, or is this actually being repetitive and is it boring? But rather, it's not about is it being boring, but rather, am I creating the habits, or am I creating the cues to make it enticing still every single day, so that I can get to whatever goal I want to get to, whether it be saving, whether it be training, whether it be reading. And so I was listening, before I came in, I was listening on Facebook a bit, and one of the guys, I don't know, it was George, and you're saying he's not a reader, but it's very funny because this book actually deals with the fact that it's not about, for instance, reading the whole book and we want to finish the whole book, but rather taking it one chapter at a day, 2 minutes at a time, for instance, as Shama was talking about, where you read that part and you go every day, it becomes a habit and it becomes automatic. You actually add to the automation and actually refine you actually doing it. Now you almost have a visual cue every single day to say, oh yeah, today it's that time of the night for me to read my chapter a day. So yeah, I'm done.
I think one of the things that he's saying, which you mentioned patience, but he kind of realizes that patience can be the enemy, and he advocates for instant almost gratification. So you must make whatever that, I think it's in chapter 15, you must make it satisfying, whatever you do. And I think you mentioned the idea of a jar, that every time you do something, you reward yourself. And funny enough, I was saying to my gym instructor, if he challenged me to 2 runs a day to really exceed expectation, I will actually always get the money, because I'm all about the money, And I've seen, even in golf, if you put money, you can even put 1 rand, I will exceed expectations if you put money in it. So, it's those kind of things that you said, find either instant punishment for bad habits or instant gratification, so that you're not bored. But I think in my view, that what you need to then absolutely make do is that you schedule what you need to do, and you make it interesting, you make it fascinating, you basically make sure that you show up for yourself. And that's also a phrase that you mentioned, showing up for yourself every single day at a specific time that you set for those 2 minutes, but also making sure that you're not getting bored in the process. So I'd say, I don't know if Miss Trainee, I don't know if she can hear me. I wanted to hear what she had to say, but you all seem to have loved what she advocates. And I just want to ask a question: if anybody, since you started reading this book, tried to implement any of his advice, or any, because there's a lot of examples. I mean, it's 20 chapters of ideas, even though it's organized into 4 different laws. You can't do them all at once. But I just want to find out if there was anything specific that came out of it that that you tried, and how did that go?
Can I try?
Who's that? Is George?
No, it's me. It's Rosh.
Okay. Oh, great. Yes.
I think for me, I mean, one of the things, I think one thing that also, and taking over from what Malisela was saying, is, especially with the 2 athletes, is what he's trying to say is some habits are easier to form if they are in line with our character, with who we are. And he was giving an example to say, if you want to start a habit that is against your character, for instance, it's going to be very difficult. But if, say, for instance, you're an introvert, and introvert, they like solitude, and because of that, it's easier for you to start writing, because the science of writing by its very self is it's isolating. And he was saying that if your character is an extrovert, there are certain habits that comes easier because of your character. So I sort of like, okay, that's interesting, because and he was talking about how do you sustain your habits. So in answering your question, I mean, I blog every day, right? So as I blog every day, I think I started blogging about 9 years ago. But when I started blogging the first time, I blogged, I think, was it 9 years? I can't remember, but it was just after the Marikana incident, and I was venting out. It was not like a blog. I was just venting out, and I wanted a space where I can just vent out. And I wrote a blog article, and the emotion was out, but I didn't blog for a year. And I remember exactly the same year later, I started blogging. Then I was intentional about it. But obviously, you get into form, and you do it, and then you get writer's block, and then you stop writing. Until I go to a point, and I sort of started appreciating. And this is why I love this book, because he's sort of saying, yes, you need to find a way where you can do this on a daily basis, and maybe one day you will fall off, and that's okay. But make sure that the day after that you come back, because if you fall off on one day and you fall off on 2 days, you might actually starting a new habit of not doing what you are supposed to do. So yes, I think, I mean, the fact that I blog every day, whether it's in the morning, it's in the evening, whether it's Christmas or New Year's, it becomes a habit that you do, and it becomes something that if you don't do it, you feel like something is missing. And for me, it's something that as I was reading, I could resonate with that. But also, I think I loved what he said about the fact that take one habit at a time. Don't try and do multiple habits at the same time. Take 1 or 2 habits and start working on those. And the environment, create an environment. If you want to read before you sleep, maybe as you're preparing to sleep, take a book, put it on your bed, on your pillow, right? Do whatever you want to do, and before you sleep, here's a book. It will remind you that you need to read a page. If you want to, and I've also tried this also, if you want to stop spending more time on social media, delete your apps on your phone, which is I've deleted my social media apps on my phone. So initially it's a bit of a shocker to the system, But over time, the only time I use social media is when it's on my laptop. But I know it will take me some time to open my laptop. I need to be in a specific place to open my laptop, and then I can be on social media. But once I close my laptop, I'm off social media. So I started with Facebook, and then now I've taken off Twitter, right? I never had LinkedIn on my phone. And that helps me to focus when I'm not on my laptop, when I'm in meetings, for instance. I don't have to be on my phone. I've also muted all my apps. So, and I loved it because he also mentioned that in the book, to say, if you mute all your apps on your phone, you don't have this constant thing that's always ringing on the phone and disturbing you. Because once you start hearing a sound on your phone, you want to pick it up and you want to see what's the message about. But if you mute it, and when you pick up your phone, it's when you are intentionally, you want to see, not because the phone is forcing you, but it's because you want to see. And I've tried all those, and then they work. And I was like, wow, this is quite amazing, because now suddenly it liberates you from this bondage of all these gadgets controlling your life. So yes, I've tried it, and it works. It's not easy, obviously, but it works. But I think, let me just maybe determine. I found the book in certain instances to be funny. I think this guy has got a sense of humor, because there are instances where he would say, if you want to do a habit, say it out loud. Like my wife would say, okay, we're about to go out. Do I have my bag? Check. Do I have my keys? Check. Do I have my husband? Check. I found that to be funny. Right? So he's got this little bits of funny moments, and then he kept me going as I was reading the book. I found that to be quite interesting. But yeah, Shama, it's a soft book. Great Choice is a hard book, and this is actually quite a soft book, and yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you.
Can I also add?
Yeah.
Can I also add?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, like for instance, like when you realize that you're actually implementing, like for me, I started even last month, even when we were doing Great by Choice, like my friends and I meet at 5:30 in the morning just to walk for 5 kilometers every morning. No, not every morning. I go Monday, Tuesdays, and Fridays. And for me, I realized that the days when I think about the actual walk, I'm going to arrive late. But when I decide, okay, let me just get out of the house and drive to the place, and then when I get there, once I'm there, there's nothing that I can do. I have to walk the 5 kilometers. So it's the building up to the goal that I realize actually works quite nicely. So for me, when I wake up in the morning at 5:00, I'm like, I'm getting out of the house. That's it. And then I'll think about the walk when I park and I get there. And I realize that it feeds in, because now that I walk and I work out, I'm starting to drink more water. Like every day I drink 2 liters of water, and my skin is starting to show. You see? So it's like, it's nice, when he says it should be satisfying. At the end of the day, when I look at my skin, I'm like, oh, nice. I could do this, So, and then the other thing that I liked is when he said, like, you have to create a loyalty program for yourself. Like that couple built saving for their Europe trip, instead of just saying, okay, I'm going to save, but you're saving towards something and you label it as such. And then that's what I want to implement now. Like I want a new lens for my camera. So I need to say I'm saving for that specific lens instead of just saving.
Yeah, and I think with that, he did it as a trade-off, that every time they eat in instead of eating out, so it's almost like it's an under instant
gratification.
Yeah. If you don't. Speaking of that reward loyalty, I was in a sit and write program, and there's something that he said that I was like, I'm not gonna resonate with this, because he said, if you want to be a writer, and he's like, it's not like you're writing a PhD. And then he lost me at that point, because I'm like, that's what I'm trying to achieve, finishing a damn PhD. And he can't, and after that I have to worry about writing, articles and whatever. So I was sitting in a sit and write group, and everybody was complaining about alcoholism, because that's what COVID has done to people. And one girl said that what she did, I met her for the first time in a sit and write group, and she says every time she finishes a chapter, she has a sip of red wine, and that's the only way she gets to, like she basically doesn't drink too much, and she rewards herself with just a sip of red wine. So she drinks less because it takes longer to write a page, but she also still has an alcohol and she gets to write. So she built some nice motivations in it. I was like, oh, that's actually a nice way to drink less, because during COVID people were home more and they were drinking more, but not achieving. So it was quite interesting that people do. And I think that that's also this thing that he calls staggering your habits, that if you can't, like what you're saying, while you're driving somewhere, you listen to a podcast, while you're walking you drink the water targets. So you need to, and that I'm actually hoping that that's something that sounded nice and easy. So while you're doing something, also add on a habit that you want to add. So you might have one or two habits that you don't have space for, but look at where in your life can you add that habit while you're doing other things that you normally do in life. And I think that that's what I like what Dr. Roche said about just add one or two habits. But then my concern was we've got also so many things going on in life. When do you get to the other ones? Like, I'm going to be 100 before I get to my list of habits that I want to add in. So that's quite interesting. Did anybody else, Marcela, did you add any habits after you read this book, and are you winning at it?
So I'm not gonna lie to you. I started this book. I finished this book like this Saturday, in fact, or this Sunday. And I don't want to say I did it. So there's just habits I've done. It was just a good reminder, and I think only now I'm kind of like starting to put better measures in place. I think there's a lot of, like I said, I have to read it again, but there's a lot of nuggets. There's a lot of nuggets that I kind of like took from it, and slowly but surely, I think I'm implementing them consciously now. Whilst in the past it wasn't so, but now it's more of a okay. There's actually, I especially like what put the consequences, or what does it say? Gotta put things in place that you wouldn't like to do, and because like you put things in place that motivate you to do the work, because you don't like what, if you don't do it, it will end up in, like, I don't know if that makes sense, but
I think
things like
make it obvious.
no, it's not the make it obvious. It's basically, Dr. Rush, I think, mentioned it, where if you put what is it?
I think making it easy, like when you're switching off.
When you put the book on your pillow before you sleep, and then it reminds you that, hey, by the way, I needed to read this book. And
it's not that. There's another thing you mentioned, Dr. Rush, where he talks, or was it you that mentioned it, but that talks about if you do, you almost create the other side of a good habit. So if
instant satisfaction and instant punishment.
Yes, instant punishment, like that, exactly. So that for me, I've started almost doing, just so that I can kind of like see how that plays along with it. Because I could, when he was talking about it, I imagined how it would be right now for me to do that, and put that in place. And I think that's the first place maybe I'm starting, in the sense. But we'll see. I think from Saturday to now, I don't think that's a very long time to test it out. So I think as time goes on, it's something that I'm really conscious of, and I want to start implementing as well.
George, is there anything that you started testing from this book since you started audio listening? Now you're reading. That's a good start.
Oh, yeah, thank you. As I said, it's a mental diet. It's something that I practice in. I'm not perfect, definitely I do, get things wrong, and I beat, but what I've noticed is that I sometimes become my biggest enemy and my biggest critic. So I'm trying to make that switch, to become my biggest friend and my biggest fan. and always being nice to myself, how I speak to myself, and, how I fail, how to reset and try again. So I think as much as I fail at implementing certain things, I try not to be too hard on myself. But yeah, it's an everyday struggle. It's definitely an everyday struggle. But I think with time, eh, what you often, as Dr. Raj said, what you often repeat, it definitely does become a habit, and yeah, it's just the proof is in the pudding. I think the most important thing is just to be at it. The it's not a spectator sport. Growth is not a spectator sport. You really need to get your hands dirty and try where you can. Yeah.
So the reason I was asking that was find out what was your favorite part of the book. So I'm gonna ask the next question. What was your least favorite chapter in this book or recommendation in this book? George, I'm gonna start with you and then work it backwards with everybody else. What did you not like about this book?
For me, the practical aspect, like, how do I practically like do those things, even though I'm failing, even though I'm procrastinating, you know, how do I implement those things that I'm failing?
George, you're fading.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me? Hello?
Yeah, can you? Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I'm having a network issue here. But yeah, just the practical part, in terms of how do you get those things in action, and most importantly, how to keep it consistent. I know a book can't magically change your life, but just the consistency part. How do I get started, and how do I remain consistent? I think that could help. You know. But yeah, I
Okay.
think yes, for me, yeah, that's what stood out.
Okay. Lolo, what did you like the least about this book? Lolo still with us?
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry,
Okay.
we had also had network issues. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. I mentioned earlier, it's the fact that I felt he held back or could have expanded more on the plateau of latent potential. Yes, it was diagramized, but I wasn't connecting with it in the way that I would have liked to. And then the aspect of rewarding instantly. It can get very dangerous. Rewarding instantly. No, think about it a little bit. No, no, it left me. I left. It sounds nice, but I no that. But there, I mean, I agree with him. From a stimulus perspective, make sure you remember that moment by creating make it a monument and a milestone by creating a tombstone out of it. But I couldn't imagine instant reward from a parenting perspective and how practical and consistent I would be. It has potential to be used but manipulatively, the instant potential thing, instant reward thing. So I was a bit iffy about it. But I get the gist in terms of what he wants to do. But for me, that's the part where, I mean, you can't say the journey is the reward, but at the same time, reward yourself immediately. Maybe I read it differently, but for me, there wasn't a nice harmony to that. Reward yourself along the way, fantastic. Make time to smell the roses, but no. I know you like the 2 rands at gym, but
No, but it's not happening. He's not bringing money. I've been trying to get him to bring the 2 rands, but because I told him he'll never leave with money. But I kind of see it with my other things that are not habits, where in business, because you know, you need to like motivate yourself. And I remember when I trained to become a beekeeper, I came back the next day and I'm like, on my LinkedIn, I'm an apiarist. And I'm like, I've never even handled a bottle of honey, but that's who I am. And I think he says it like, if you run and you call yourself, like you change your identity. So there are different ways that you can.
That I like.
But I also,
yeah.
I think I've discussed this with Toby in another platform, that people do that to you at work all the time, where they tell you how great you are at something just so they can offload the work off you. So they reward you before they even get you to do the work. So and I think you see that, so it's almost like self-manipulation. Of every day that you do something,
Yeah.
you could just give yourself the title. It doesn't mean you go work out and then you go have a smoothie. You know, it's a positive reward, not a counter reward.
Yeah.
That if you've written a page, you call yourself an author and you brag about your work. I think there's another book that that is linked with this called Austin Kleon talks about show your work. That if you're a social media person, like brag about your work on a daily basis and show people what you're doing, because every day is that. So and it comes back to what I think Marcel is like, if you know yourself and then you put measurements, then you're able to see that 1%. You know, I remember when I was learning Chinese and I was in China, and my teacher will think that I'm stupid because I could not remember 10 Chinese characters. And I'll basically say to her, every time that I'm in China, I'm rewarding myself. Like it's an achievement. I'm sticking it out. You know, the book is called Show Your Work by Austin Kleon or something like that.
Yes, he actually has a very good series around being building in public as a creative. So I like that you raised it. Yeah. But you were asking a question earlier around. Sorry.
No, I'm saying it's that process of, if you're doing something that's a habit, and you look at Dr. Roche, who's a blogger, and every day he blogs about something, and it's a 1%. So it's that 1% that you gotta say, and it has to do with, that's why I was like, it's so much admin, because you gotta measure that process. Because if you're not measuring, then you don't know what achievement, or you can't celebrate, you can't reward yourself, because you don't know the next day you're 1% longer, what you've done, what you haven't done, what you're celebrating. So I think it comes with that measuring, and that Marcel is saying, know yourself, so that you know that this is my base. So tomorrow it's easier to celebrate because you're like 1% away from the base and incrementally making that progress. So if you don't measure, there's nothing to reward. You don't know what to reward.
Yeah, I like that you raise the Dr. Roche's.
So you're saying something
blogging. Yeah, I'm saying I like that you raised Dr. Roche's blogging, because I don't believe he necessarily started with the end in mind. He just started with that 1%, but it's become such a manuscript of encouragement and motivation for other people. He doesn't need to talk about how much he is a blogger. People see him blogging every day, and that's their resource for energy, for inspiration. You asked a question earlier around what we are doing to operationalize what we've learned. So I tried something with our mentee program. So they're currently on a 7-day challenge where there are certain values that they should display, or acts, really, more kindness and so forth. And the challenge includes, I hope none of them are watching, because the challenge includes documenting how it is that you played out that. How are you more considerate or caring or this or that? So it's a 7-day challenge. But the idea is to ensure that the routine of writing or doodling daily, or capturing your voice notes, becomes a daily thing and an enjoyable thing in your own way. Dr. Mamabolo mentioned earlier on that the book does say that your goals should be something that you enjoy and they are in line with who you are. And it takes us back to knowing ourselves well enough to say, okay, I don't write often, but this is what I do well and I do often. How can I use that to change people's lives in a positive way, and do that in a consistent way? So yeah, we're trying I'll give you an update on the 7-day challenge, and if those learnings does take them forward. Hopefully there'll be journaling daily.
You're also taking the challenge. It's not just
Yes,
your mentees.
the mentors, the mentees, and it's not easy because you call yourself out. And during the course of the day, we ask ourselves, are you caring? Are you being compassionate? Are you being considerate? And nobody polices anybody, but you display it in your own way, and you capture it in your own way, you document it in your own way. And where you didn't, you improve it's the next day, you improve it, but we try and live out the 7 C's. It's
so
hard.
you're measuring
Yeah.
every day you're stacking it up.
Yeah, you said it. It's the measurement part.
Okay. Thanks. So Dr. Roche, what was your least favorite part of the book?
I think there were just too many. You know what James Clear is doing? He's writing like Malcolm Gladwell. He takes stories from all over the show and he puts them into one, and you end up confused. What am I reading here? I felt there were too many stories. I'm like, okay, I'm enough with stories now. I think I get the point. But he just kept on bringing stories. So I felt he's doing a Malcolm Gladwell, Gladwellian. There's a term like that, where he's pulling all these stories because he's trying to drive a point. And I felt it was just too overwhelming for me. And I got story fatigued at some point. I love stories, and I think I think if you do them in moderation, that's great. But I felt there were just too many stories in the book, and for me it was like a bit of a, you can take one story and sort of do a whole lot of 360 on it, or you can take 360 stories and with each story drive 1 point. I'll be story fatigued after some point. So I felt there were just too many. I mean, look, what James Clear is saying is nothing new. I mean, there's Power of Habit. There's another book, Power of Habit, which also talks about that. There's other books that talks about. It's really nothing new. But
there's also this one.
Yes, and there's also exactly. So yeah, I felt it was just, there's those books where a person says, I need to write 300 pages. I need to find ways to get to 300 pages and they just put more stories. So for me, I felt it was too many stories in one book and I was fatigued at some point. But yeah, that's what I didn't like about the book. But otherwise, I think we'll rate it. I'm assuming we'll rate it at the end, or should I rate it now?
We'll rate it after we've influenced and created a bias.
Right.
Well, Maricel agrees with you that he thinks it was heavy, and I agree with you. There were so many stories, and and the difference maybe is how he writes the story before he gets to the point, instead of, and I think with whatever David Green or somebody who writes the 48 Laws of Power, he tells you the principles of whatever he's talking about, and the stories become optional. But with him, it's like he writes a story and you want to see where does this end, and it forces you to do that rather than to the core.
Absolutely.
Shama, what was your least favorite part of the book?
For me, I mean, I really enjoyed the book thoroughly, but it felt like fudge, when something's like just, when something is like just so nice at some point. I'm like, this sounds a little too good to be true. It was like a buffet of dessert, honestly. All you can eat is just sweet things. At some point I'm like, this is just too nice, and I'm like, you know what, let me just focus on one thing that's working right now. If I want to do a task, let me just start with 2 minutes. And then there's a point where he says, if it starts becoming like a job, stop, because it's supposed to be satisfying at the end of the day. But I think the book is just too nice. I don't know how to put it. Too nice as in overwhelming. I think Malesela said, someone said overwhelming at some point, because it's just like, this is so nice, but is it even practical? But if you look in hindsight, it is actually quite practical, but it's just nice. I don't know if I'm making sense. It's like, imagine eating fudge the whole
You
day.
hated that it was too nice.
Mm. I don't know if I'm making sense though. Am I making sense?
Okay,
Like,
no,
it's so nice.
yeah, it's just too nice that it's almost like it's like a fairy tale book because
Yes.
like anecdotes after
Although the,
anecdotes after anecdotes.
yeah, although there
Yeah.
are truths to it, and yeah, I'll just leave it. So if I can say, like, the one thing that I took out of this thing, it's for me at the point where I'm at is the 2-minute thing. Do it for 2 minutes. We'll see others as we move on with life.
All right, I like that. I'm gonna ask the guys that are in the room, Ntobi and Miss Trine and Dumi, if you just from basically what everybody has been discussing, what is your take? Do you think it summarizes a sense about the book?
Yeah. Thank you guys for sharing. It's just been a listening session. I did say I'm gonna sponge off a lot of you. So I grasped just 2 key concepts from this. And one is that habits are formed. And for me, to facilitate that, I would need to embrace the behavioral changes from the onset. And the other would be holding oneself accountable to what I set out to do, and be able to rate myself with a personal scorecard. And I don't even know how that can happen because I think sometimes I'm ill-disciplined. So a personal scorecard, I wonder how that would eventually work. But it needs one to be, from what I'm gathering from all of you, one to be a personal motivator on a daily basis, starting with the little changes, your 2 minutes, and you eventually build up. Like Usisi was saying that she has a walking session on 3 days a week, and she just knows that she needs to get out of the house and then she will get there. So the building up to that that goal eventually. So yeah, but I'm not big on the rewarding oneself. I think I try not to do that, because imagine if I did that, and I would be so fat right now because I love chocolate, and that's something that I used to do. I love wine as well. I know I even sometimes, if I work late at night, I would be drinking. So I try not to do those things anymore. But yeah, those are the concepts that I gathered, and I think I would like to read the book. But when I do read the book, I'm just going to read fast. I'll probably skip through the stories that are kind of like mundane and boring a bit, and then get to the elements, maybe the core, and get to experience it for myself and try and personalize it and see where I can change. I need to actually have one good habit that needs to start, that needs to show with positive outcomes, and one of them is exercising in the morning. So I've hurt my ankle, but I was on course. But I'm of the view that the 21 days mark actually works. I've used it before. Same with reading. In the mornings, I know that I have to wake up. If I do wake up on time with my alarm, then I have 1 hour for devotions and things like that. Then I'll do my emails, and then I'll start preparing my daughter and myself for the day. But yeah, thank you so much for sharing your views and encouraging me to do better.
Okay, thanks. I'm glad you got
No.
something out of being here. Toby, what was your?
No, Shama,
what did you get?
you mustn't forget that it's the 5G that makes the cotton shrink. So it's not that you've gained weight, it's the 5G. At least that's
What's
what I'm
that?
going with. So it's not that we've gained weight, it's the clothes that have gotten smaller. But on a serious note, the one for me is I often do things in sprints and then I run out of energy. So the point that resonated with me is don't go past that threshold that you've set. So if your next target is, well, if my next target is the 1%, be disciplined and stay to the 1%. Don't do 10%. And then for the next 10 days, don't do anything. So it's just, it's being disciplined in your laziness, if I can put it that way. So that's how I get the psychology of it to be a negative and a positive, because you're doing something good, but then only for a limited amount of time. So that's the point I'm taking out. So thanks for everyone's reviews. I've enjoyed the session.
Okay, so I think just to in the little wrapping up, I'm just gonna ask everybody to give a rating of, out of 10, what would you give the book? I'm gonna start with Shama because Shama's quite generous. Shama, I actually want you to, if I ever write a book, you're reviewing it. I love how
For sure. I'm
so
gonna give you.
how would you rate this one?
I think an 8. I mean, I really enjoyed it, though it was like overwhelming with the sweetness of it all. But I think an 8 out of 10. I really loved it.
What's taking away that 2 for you to give it a full 10?
The fact that it seems there's a part of it that just seems too good to be true. Like it seems so easy, like too easy, right? Maybe I'm used to struggling in life that I just want everything to be hard. But I think 8. Yeah.
That quote, for me, it was a very profound quote, and that's when you say you fault your systems, and it's almost like your systems become a point of success that you don't even, it shouldn't be hard, but what you're falling at is still a success. As you say, maybe you're used to working hard, but once you've got the systems, you don't work hard. And I see Ms. Treni has put a similar quote, that success is a build-up of small events that we shouldn't stop working at changing our habits for positive ones. When you're working hard and you don't see the result, it is still progress. And I think it's that post the plateau and you don't work hard and it flows because you've built the systems that you autopilot to. Yeah. So I suppose we are used to working too hard, and that 2% is like, that 2 points is like, why is it not difficult? Why is it so nice? So I get you. Dr. Roche, what would you give the book out of 10?
Yeah, I loved the book. I would give it an 8. I think I agree with Sham. I'll give it an 8. Why 8? I think it's for the first time. I think somebody, motivational books. The reason why I don't like motivational books is they don't give you the how. They always talk about you can do it. I think what James Clear has done is he's sort of broken down the step by step how to do it. Make it attractive, make it easier, satisfying, and all that. And I love that. And I'll give it an 8 because he has gone into detail into breaking the how. The reason why I'm not giving the other 2 is because it's not his original concepts. And I know someone can argue that there's nothing original under the sun, but I think and to Shama's point, it's things that we know. He's reminding us of things that we know, and how he's doing it in an amazing way. Is it a bad thing? Should I mark him down for that? Maybe I'm not being too kind, but I think 8 is still a distinction. So I think it's a good book. I think it's a book that I was chastising these other entrepreneurs today that they struggle with the basic things. I have to remind them of their mentorship session, and which says to me that they don't have the right habits. And if you struggle with the basic habits, how then do you expect to grow your business if you just struggle with maintaining your diary? So I think it's a very important book, and I think it needs to be read. That's why I'm giving it an 8. So yeah, he's done a very good job of popularizing and making something that we have always known, but he has put it in such a way that it's nice to eat. But yeah, the truth is he's over. I think he has sort of overdone some aspects of it, and there's a bit of repetition also along the way. But I think it's a good book. 8 out of 10.
Okay, that's great. And who else? Marcela said she'll give it a 7. Let me see in the messages. And I think he also says it's about originality. So it's something that has been covered before. Who else is Lolo? What would you give it? How would you rate it?
I'd rate it as 7.5 I actually appreciate the collating of what we know into one resource with guides as to how to create those pit stops in our journeys. So I'd give it a 7.5. It's a good book.
Okay. Is there anybody else from the guys that are observers? What would you give? Do you want to rate this, the concept or the idea blindly? Ms. Chen, would you like to share a rating of, if you thought from the discussions, what do you think the book should get?
I think a 5. It's like nothing new under the sun.
Great. Toby, what would you want to give it based on what the concept and the discussion and what everybody else is saying?
Sure. No, coming in blind. Let me read the book. I'll come back to you.
I think, I actually would have given it an 8 or 7, but I'm going to give it a 9 because I'm thinking we read Grit and it felt unfamiliar and unrelatable. And we read Greatness by Choice, it felt heavy. This one, although it's a lot of anecdotes, I also like the fact that in the beginning he actually qualifies that he actually has applied these things and he simplifies it. So and makes it, as Shaba says, it's more digestible than the other books. The other books had like this very aggressive touch to them, like they're about money. And I think that's when also Lora says it almost like he cares about you. It wasn't about how rich can you get, or how super successful and competitive. The other ones were very Americanized, and this one didn't have. And I kept on reading, thinking I'm gonna get that American feel of aggression, competition, be better than the rest. But this guy's just like, be you and be whatever you want. Like it's almost like live a great life without that whole motivational of I want to be the best and I'm competing with other people and I want to be here. Wait. So I like the fact that he's put together all these things and he said at the beginning, I've done all of them. I've tried it. I've succeeded at this. And the second reason, I came across his quote in a book called The 12-Year Week, which this guy basically is also quite Americanized in that you can get your whole year in 12 weeks and you can get your systems. And beginning of last year, I didn't know about this book, but I followed the 12-year week and the whole thing was about build systems. And I think I grew up all my life thinking you must have goals, you must have 5-year goals, you must have 10-year goals. And systems were boring, but he basically says that systems are not monotonous, boring thing. I wake up at 7, I do this, I do that, I do that. It's, whatever that works for you, just build that system that works for you. So it's not very prescriptive. So I think for that, I'm going to be super generous and balance the 5 that Ms. Jenny gave him and give it a 9. I would actually, and it was 5 hours as an auto read. So if you read it fast, it's basically like a 3-hour listen. And it was easy to listen, repeat. And if I read it anywhere, I could pick up what he was still saying. I didn't get lost in the message. So that's what I would give it. So I think then we basically, with the remaining time, like to basically, we need to confirm what the next book is and when the next meeting would be.
Yes. Thank you so much. So the next book is this one. I hope you can see it. I deliberately chose this one in December, The Psychology of Money by Morgan Hauser. He's also very good with, this is not financial planning, budget, those boring stuff. This is why is it that smart, intelligent people have money problems, but average people who are not highly, regarded actually have. So he goes through the emotions of money, and we all have money issues. A lot of people have money issues and they don't talk about them, and not from you don't budget, you don't, no, not those, but he talks about things like greed, happiness as well. So this is also one of the books that is highly being recommended. And I thought, let's read it in December before you guys, start reading it now before you go on Black Friday next week and start splashing in December. So this is an antidote for December's madness. So yeah, that's the book. And the review date, I'll still need to decide because I know it's gonna be in December, but I think second week of December will do. But I'll send an email to everybody with the review date. But that's the book. It's not that easy to find. If you can find it on exclusive books, great. But I've started reading it yesterday as an audiobook, and I've ordered the hard copy. So as soon as it comes through, I'll also do both. But yeah, and I know I have friends who can hook me up with an ebook as soon as we are done now. So
We strongly discourage you from reading.
I highly discourage them from sharing the link. Let the record shows that I'm highly discouraging them, but I know, that they will inadvertently, by mistake, find themselves.
We will send a disclaimer of websites we do not recommend you read and find free books from.
We'll really appreciate it.
Discourage bad habits.
Yeah, but colleagues, this is a very important book, I must say, and it's irrespective of what type of a profession you have or career you have. We all have money. We receive money. We deal with money. Money is everywhere, and I think I love what he says. He says money is everywhere, but you would expect a lot of us to know how to deal with it. And we have been exposed to money from a young age, but irrespective of it being everywhere, we still struggle with it. So yeah, but it's a good book, and I'm looking forward to hearing your views. Let me not preempt your views, but yeah, please don't hold back any punches when we have the review. Next year, because this is our last book for the year, next year we're going to start with a couple of interviews. We've invited some authors, local authors. So the first three books that we're going to review are with local authors. I'll send out the list of those with the months January, February, March. So the first 3 months, it will be local authors, maybe one from the US. And we just need to make sure that his book is accessible. And then yeah, we will be hosting authors. So it's gonna be fun. So yeah, thank you so much, colleagues. And yeah, thank you so much, Tebogo. Greatly appreciate it. Yeah, hopefully the lights are back now. So
yeah, no, because we've been talking, but I'm glad that you still managed to connect and eventually were able to connect. But thanks for everyone who's here now in a reading club on Zoom, and those who are watching on Facebook, and those who will watch later. Everybody who's on Zoom, you can actually check. I've put a chat with a disclaimer in the chat for later on. But I'm looking forward to reading this one and reconnect again in December or before the end of the year. So until then, you all take care and happy reading.
Great stuff. Thank you so much, colleagues. Have an awesome evening.
Thank you and good night.
Well done, Tebogo.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.